staying power. These are stories that have survived centuries, sometimes millennia. And this is a testament to the deep meaning or functional importance of these stories to the people who hear and tell them. Now, if I know Crash Course fans, there are probably some people right now saying, Mike, it sounds like you might lump in folk tales and maybe even fairy tales with your myths.
I will
Not
go
that
back to that screen in
maybe a
just
folk
a
tale that
moment.
creeps in from time to time, but we're going to steer clear of fairy tales for the most part. For die-hard folklorists, and yes, that is a thing, proper myths only deal with the creation of the world, or maybe the universe, and thus all real myths are religious or quasi-religious. Mythology theorists who come at myths from a religious studies angle tend to say that the main characters of myths must be gods. But this leaves out hero stories, which I think are pretty important, and also those are the ones with the sea monsters, so we're going to include those too. There are also those myths that don't feature any supernatural elements at all, what Professor Robert Siegel calls beliefs or credos. Most Americans will be familiar with the rags to riches story of the American dream. Those stories are myths not because they aren't true. Sometimes poor people do become rich and successful in spite of tough upbringings, and largely because of grit and hard work. They're myths not because they have religious significance, they're mythic because of their staying power and the tenacity with which proponents of the myth take them to be true. Because these types of stories fit into our broad definition of a significant story where personalities are the lead characters, we will be talking about them, but only in a.
There we go. That was an interesting spot to pause it. All right, so for staying power, and he was just kind of saying that myths sometimes are religious, but they don't have to be religious. That was kind of the big idea that he was saying there. Sometimes a story, a myth, can explain something and still have staying power, even if it's not a religious thing, right? So that's an important idea for us to remember. So, what I need for you to write down, and honestly, I think it might be better to go from the uh, whiteboard than here, but on the video, right? Staying power are stories that have survived centuries, sometimes millennia. So these stories are old, okay? They've been told for hundreds and thousands of years. And they're going to have functional importance. So here's what that stuff means, okay? A story, yeah, that's what we want. We're right there. So this kind of bottom part right here, okay? So in order for a story or a myth to have staying power, the first thing you need to write down and know and understand is that staying power has two parts. Okay, so there are two things that go into seeing if a story has staying power. The first part is that the story is old and was told for hundreds of years or more. So if you're reading a story and you're trying to figure out if it's a myth, you need to ask yourself, is this story super old, like hundreds of years old? And has this story been told for time and time again for hundreds of years? Okay? So everybody needs to make sure they have this in their grapes notes. This, ma'am. So we want to make sure that we have that stuff. The second thing that makes staying power, need you make sure you're getting this in your notes, is functional importance. And this is the part that's kind of confusing for some people. So, functional importance means the story has an unspoken moral that people can learn from. So, if you're looking at a story and you're trying to decide if it's a myth or not, you have to prove that it has significance. So, it's going to be a story that teaches you something about creation, something about how the world works, or how something got on earth. The story also has to be super old. And finally, the story has to have a moral lesson that people would learn from. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So, functional importance. And functional importance means that the story has an unspoken moral that people can learn from. Okay? So I'll give you a moment to get that stuff written down, and I'll move this out of the way so you can see it. All right, so we're going to go through the process of kind of understanding how to analyze a myth. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to read this story and show you how I would think it through to analyze this myth. Okay? So this is an actual myth from ancient Greece. It's called the Clash of the Titans. Okay? So we'll see. I'm going to have you move your bag here. Is that okay? Okay. So for the Clash of the Titans, remember, our goal is to show that this was a myth. Okay? So I'm going to read the story and I'll kind of point out some things. But before I start reading the story, there are a couple of things that I need to remind us of that are going to be super important. Number one, remember our champ's auto settings. The lights are red, so we should know what that means. Number two, like we have said, mythology was used to help people understand the world around them, and the ancient Greeks did not understand the world the same way that we understand the world now. So, they're going to have different thoughts and viewpoints on some things. They are also going to understand that their Greek gods and goddesses were not humans and did not have to operate by the same rules that humans apply by. So, as we're reading, and you're like, wait a minute, Mr. Seymour, when we were learning about the Greek gods and goddesses, it said that like Zeus and Hera were married. But now this is saying they were brother and sister. Gross. Well, you have to remember that for the ancient Greeks, the gods, once again, weren't human. So does this mean that ancient Greeks thought it was okay for like humans to go out and marry their brother or sister? No, not at all. But they understood that gods were not human. They operated differently. And in order to keep their like godly bloodlines pure, they married their siblings and it wasn't a big deal, right? So we have to make sure that we're not like judging them for that because that's the way they understood their world. Okay? The other thing you have to understand, the ancient Greeks believed that gods and goddesses had human form, but they believed that there were other supernatural beings that didn't necessarily have human forms. Okay? So that's going to be super important as we read the story also. So here we go. Clash of the Titans. In the beginning, there was only chaos. Dense darkness covered everything until the earth was born out of chaos and the mountains. Go ahead, close the door. The sea and then the sky, which was Uranus, with the sun, the moon, and the stars. So, when I take a look at that first sentence, or this first little part of a paragraph, in the beginning, there was only chaos. So, according to the ancient Greeks and their beliefs, what did everything start off as? Nothingness, chaos, right? And it wasn't even nothingness, it was chaos. It was disorganized, it was crazy, and everything like that. So, in the beginning, there was only chaos. Dense darkness covered everything until something big happens. Until the earth was born out of chaos. So, for the ancient Greeks, how did they believe that the earth got here? Well, what happened? If we read the sentence, what does it say? Yeah. And so everything was chaos until the earth was born. So, for the ancient Greeks, they believed that the earth was born. Just like people are born from their moms, they believed the earth was born from chaos. Okay? So, if they believe the earth was born, do they believe the earth was living? Yes. Right? So for the ancient Greeks, the earth was born and the earth is a living thing. Like you've probably heard this term like Mother Earth or Mother Nature. Right? So, does this story tell us how the earth was created? Yeah. For the Greeks, it was created because it was born from chaos. Right? And then notice some other stuff. It talks about how the mountains came, the sea, the sky, which is also named Uranus, the sun, the moon, the stars, right? So, with my social studies brain, when I see this, I'm like, okay, we've definitely got how the world got going significance because they're telling us how the earth got here and how the stars and the moon and the sun got here. Okay? But this also tells us how mountains got here and how the seas got here. So it's also how the world works significance. So this myth, does it have significance so far? Yes or no? Yes, we can prove it has significance. It taught the Greeks where the world, how the earth was created. It taught them where the sun came from, where the sky came from, all sorts of things. So this myth has significance. And we can show that it has how the earth got going significance because it says the earth was born out of chaos. Okay. So let's keep reading. Oh, and the other thing, this doesn't have anything to do with analyzing the myth, but it's going to help you to understand it better. So remember how the Greeks believed the earth was living? They also believed the sky was a living thing, right? So the sky, named Uranus, is living just like the earth. So then Uranus, the sky, and the earth came together and gave birth to the Titans. But Uranus was afraid that one of his children would take his throne. That is why he enclosed every one of them in the depths of the earth. But his son, Kronos, the strongest of the Titans, defeated him and became the world leader. He married Rhea, who gave birth to 2 gods and 3 goddesses, Hades, Poseidon, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter. So again, if we look at this story, there's a lot going on here, right? Uranus and Earth had some kids. Uranus was afraid that his kids were going to like take over his throne and kick him out. So because he was afraid his kids were going to throw him off, kick him off his throne, what did he do to the kids according to the myth? He didn't. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, right? Don't guess. What does it say? We have it right here. He trapped him. Is that what you said? Yeah, he trapped him. Where did he trap him at? Under the ground. Yes, long distance high five, sir. Okay, so He trapped his kids under the ground to keep his throne safe, but Kronos got out and then defeated him. So he was afraid that his children were going to get stronger than him and overthrow him. And so he tried to do things to stop it, and it wound up making it happen. Right? So let's look at the next paragraph. But Kronos inherited the fear of his father, and he believed one of his offspring would later take his throne. So what's Kronos afraid of? Yeah, his children are afraid of him doing the same thing to him that he did to his father. So when they were born, Kronos swallowed them. Right? Now remember, Kronos is a titan. He's huge, he's big, all this sort of stuff. However, Rhea was expecting a sixth child. Okay? And fearing it would meet the same fate as the others, she secretly gave birth on a mountain in Crete. We should know where that's at, right? Crete should sound familiar, right? On a mountain in Crete, and hid the newborn there. She named the child Zeus. She also tricked Kronos into thinking he swallowed his child by giving him a stone wrapped in swaddling clothing. So remember, Kronos isn't stupid. He knows that his wife is pregnant. And so she goes off and gives birth in secret and then comes back with what's supposed to be a baby. Kronos swallows it because he doesn't want this baby to grow up and take his throne, right? The nymphs took care of Zeus and fed the baby with the milk of a goat. When he grew up, Zeus found his father and tricked him into drinking a mixture of wine and mustard, which caused him to disgorge the contents of his stomach. Anybody have an idea what that means? Throw it up, right? So basically, Zeus finds his dad, who has swallowed all 5 of his brothers and sisters. He gives him this nasty stuff that makes him puke, and Kronos pukes up all 5 of his brothers and sisters, right? Now, here's the funny part. Zeus's older brothers and sisters came out of Kronos fully grown. When they were swallowed, they were kids, and now when he throws them up, he throws up like adults, right? This is how the great Titan alchemy began. The war between the Titans and the gods, with Zeus as their leader. This titanic battle lasted for 10 years. The gods defeated the Titans and threw them into Tartarus, a dark and gloomy place as far from the earth as the earth is from the sky. Okay? Then the gods fought with the giants for the dominance of the world. The gigakamati lasted for a long time as well. I know what time it is. Give me just a second. But the gods were again victorious. Thus Zeus became the ruler of the world, and he and the other gods settled Olympus. So we have to figure out, is this story a myth? Well, does it have significance? Yes or no? Yes, it's got how the world got going significance and how the world works significance. Is this story old? Yes. So now we have to ask ourselves, pause. I didn't tell us to start packing up yet. Like I said, I know what time it is. Just a second. So does this story have a unspoken moral lesson?
Yes, don't eat children.
Well, no, not quite. Like, of course we don't eat children, right? But that's not really a moral lesson. So remember, a moral lesson is something, so just so you know, when the bell rings, I'm not going to let us go. Because 1, we're still recording. 2, I told you I know what time it is and I know how much time this will take. However, with me having to keep stopping, we're not going to get done at the time we're supposed to get done. So,
We have a couple registration changes. Hartley
Almost done, right? So we have to find out, does this story have functional importance? Does it have a moral? And yes, don't eat children is something that we should live by, but it's not necessarily a moral, right? So if we look, what was Kronos super afraid of? So Kronos was afraid that he would be overthrown. He was so afraid of losing power, he was willing to eat his own children, right? Now, did he wind up saving his power, or did he lose it anyway? So the idea that Greeks would have took from this is, don't let fear of losing power ruin your life. Have a great day. You can go now. Okay. Shaitan.